Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, World Alternative Media here with Ammon Bundy, and honestly I have to say, first of all, thank you so much for joining us. You are a true hero, and I don't say that lightly, so again, thank you very much. I wanted to ask you, before we get into the more specific details of the matter, of property rights and stuff like that, I wanted to ask what your definition of freedom is, as we see so many people use that word so loosely. This government is going to bring us freedom, or this entity is going to bring us freedom, or et cetera, et cetera. What is your definition of freedom?
My definition of freedom is being able to do whatever I want, as long as I do not infringe upon my neighbor's rights or somebody else's rights. And that's that simple. I believe I can do whatever I want. I believe I'm an agent unto myself, and the only limit I have is what your rights are. And that's it.
Absolutely. And it should be as simple as that. And I have to ask then, going forward, what is your definition of slavery?
Well, I would say when another person or people forcefully take the fruits of a person's labor for their own benefit. I think, maybe there's a better definition, but that certainly seems to be what we see in history over and over. I look at if we look at the Old Testament biblical history with the Israelites and the Egyptians. Well, what were they doing? They were forcing a people to basically give them the needs, build their homes, take care of their kids, provide, grow their food, prepare their food, clean their homes, build their buildings, so they didn't have to, so that then they can go out and have the fun and do the things that they wanted to do. And that's certainly slavery, and we see it on all different kinds of levels. It's not just one race or one time part in history. We are experiencing that now.
And something that I really respect about you and your family is the consistency. Consistency is an issue among many people. A lot of people follow identities. And when you stood for your land, when you stood for your family, when you stood for this land that the government had no ownership of, but claimed ownership of, I found it really interesting how, that was standing for property rights. I was standing for individual property rights, something that needs to be defended by the individual, not some other entity, right? And then I think it was about a year ago, you got in a lot of trouble for staying consistent on that point when talking about the borders, when calling out the immoral act of shooting tear gas at children along the border. One of the biggest land grabs in American history is happening right now along the southern border. I wanted to ask you, through defining property rights, your consistency on this matter, why you felt it important to talk about this issue that obviously wasn't getting you any praise.
Yeah, well, it comes down to the principle of it, I guess, to the foundation or the truth of it. You call it what you want, and that is that, as an individual, we have certain rights. People might have heard it many different ways, but we have certain rights, and really, to be honest with you, borders have nothing to do with it. Governments have nothing to do with it. Jurisdictions, if you will, have nothing to do with it. And no matter where you're at, you still have those rights. I think the Declaration of Independence is one of the greatest documents that's ever been drafted, because it identifies that all men are created equal, that they have these rights. And it doesn't say, because you live in the United States of America that you have those rights, or because you live in Mexico or you live in South America or in Europe that you have those rights. And so for people to believe that in freedom, but then not believe that somehow these refugees, not only do they have a need, right, but somehow they're all criminals because they're trying to express and their rights, they're trying to make their lives better. To me is an inconsistency on their side, and certainly not on mine, even though I was attacked as being the inconsistent one, or maybe like flipping my position or my views, and it was exactly opposite. I was being very consistent.
It reminds me a lot of Orwell, War is Peace, that kind of stuff, because you were very consistent on it, and like you said, people were coming out saying he's so inconsistent. People were even calling you a traitor, which blew my mind, because if people were following along with one side of property rights, why wouldn't they respect it if it's someone else's? And this is where it kind of plays into this, what I believe to be a communist kind of myth of public property. Like the government owns this land and they can say who can come in and who can go out. And if they can decide that, they can decide, well, it basically means that they own that land. So everyone else is cattle on their farm at that point. And I just find it interesting that so many people who are usually on the right side of things as far as freedom goes, suddenly they say, well, but in this case, I disagree because, I don't like those people. I mean, what do you think about from that side of, or that perspective, where those people are coming from? Well, I mean, what is the confusion?
Well, so I think this idea that that we're a sovereign nation or something to that, it's impossible to be a sovereign nation. Now, don't get me wrong, people in an area with their sovereignty can unite, right, if they choose, and they can say, okay, together we have a right to protect our sovereignty, individual sovereignty, right, because they have that right, and but that and from somebody else coming in and trying to take them over or to force them to live under another jurisdiction or something. So in that sense only would someone, where you could say, well, a nation is sovereign, but it's only because of the sovereign of the individual. And the sovereign, by definition, is the right to rule. And the only right that you have is the right to rule yourself. And the only right that I have is the right to rule myself, right? I do not have a right to rule you. And nobody in government on any level has a right to rule you. They only have a right to rule themselves. And no group of people, no matter how many people get together and decide, they do not have a right to rule you. Only you have a right to rule you. And so it comes down to that. And we have to understand these principles and this, I mean, I've phrased it as, a nationalist, where actually how dangerous it really is that somehow a nation is sovereign and therefore it has the right to rule somehow itself, and the people really don't play a part in that, or maybe they do play a part in that. No, a nation is nothing. It's not an entity, and it does not have the right to rule.
Well, this is a really interesting point because, rightly so, a lot of people say we got to avoid globalism, the New World Order. And I tend to say, well, I mean, isn't this just a smaller version of the exact same problem? I mean, where does it end? And that ends really at an individual's feet. But I have to ask going forward then, there are a lot of attempts to seize the guns as of recently, with red flag laws going all throughout the country. People have died, and I mean, it's so subjective. People can say that guy is anti-government and he's kind of suspicious. The police come in and demand his guns, and he either gives it to him or defends himself. I mean, where do you think we're going as far as gun rights go in this country as of 2019, 2020?
So I don't think it's gun rights. That's not what they're after. I don't think it's the guns that they're after. Now, don't get me wrong, they want the guns, but it is the right to defend yourself that is being attacked. It is the right to be able to say, these are mine, they belong to me. They were, they're endowed, or it's a gift from God, the Creator. Call them whatever you want, but they're a gift. And he created them, therefore he owns them, and he endowed them, gave them to me. And no one else has a right. And therefore I have a right to use violence or force, if necessary, to defend the right that was given to me. And that's what they're attacking. They're attacking the ability to defend ourselves. That's what our whole prosecution was. We spent 2 years in federal prison just trying to get to trial. And what was on trial? What was the question? Well, do the American people have a right, or does anybody really, not just the American people? Because you get with the UN, you go beyond that, these world governments, these elitists, that's what they're trying to say, is that individuals do not have a right to defend themselves, or that they're scared of the individual, which both is the fact. So.
And it's crucial to property rights. It's crucial to all these rights that are simply only existent if you defend them. So they kind of all go out the door if you're unable to defend yourself and your family. And finally, and I'm going down with the ship of consistency here, folks, because unfortunately it's really difficult to keep people consistent in this day and age, there's a lot of identity, a lot of politics thrown from both sides that kind of get people on teams rather than being individuals and thinking for themselves. The final thing I wanted to ask you about is the people that are going to come and take the guns. And that would be the police, and that would be whatever kind of militant agency of the government that might come in and try and take those guns. And I think that is one of the major first steps, and I think there's a huge blind spot on the side of many people that consider themselves conservatives, etc. when it comes to this issue, is you'll see, don't tread on me, and NRA member, Gun Owners of America, and then suddenly it'll say thin blue line. You'll have a thin blue line on the same vehicle, and you see them everywhere. I'm in Nevada. I mean, it's everywhere. And you kind of have to question, wait, you want to defend your guns, come and take it, but then you got a thin blue line. I mean, what are your thoughts on the use of violence by the government utilizing the police to take the guns versus, private militias that defend said guns? So
anybody who truly has a good intent that's in law enforcement is and will fulfill those type of orders, right, along with many others, is simply confused. They do not understand the principles of freedom. And right now we'll give them that benefit of the doubt, right? We'll give them the benefit of the doubt. We'll give them that benefit because you cannot say that an individual has their sovereignty or the right to rule themselves and the right to liberty, the right to life and all of that, and then on the other hand say that he does not have a right to defend it, right? So they have to be confused, but when I have asked that question to law enforcement, most of them will say that they know the system is broken. I mean, I spent 2 years, I'd ask the guards, I'd bring it up to them. Most of the time it wasn't really a great conversation. It was more, but they would say the honest ones would acknowledge that something was definitely wrong and they recognized it, but they would always come down to this, and it was that I have a mortgage to pay, and I kind of shamed them in the sense, say, look, you're willing to cost me and my children's freedom so you can pay your mortgage? I go, when are you going to stand up for what you know is right? And because the inconsistency is there. I mean, and it's huge in law enforcement. Now they'll side on the side. Well, what about criminals? We have to be there for criminals. We have to be there. Well, but they're not punishing crime at all. That's a whole nother topic we can get into. But somehow they think that the American dream and the American way of life is going to be lost if they stop pulling people over and beating them up and take them to jail. And if they stop doing what their superiors tell them to do, that's absolutely inaccurate historically and every other way. There's plenty of examples in Europe and others where law enforcement went on strikes and crime decreased. So anyway, hopefully that answers your question. But I mean, it certainly can go much further into it.
Oh yeah, well, you're the kind of person I could probably talk to for many hours because I completely agree with everything you're saying, and that's something that I don't get a whole lot. It's very refreshing. As far as people who come out and say, but what if? We need government because what if this happens? And to be consistent on the matter and just say, not what if, what is morally right? And you get these people, maybe 5% of the government left. Minarchism. We'll shrink government down to this small little bit. I mean, I should finish it off actually by asking you that. I mean, what do you think about this small little tiny bit of government left versus, complete self-governance or voluntarism?
So my clear stand on that is that if you want to call it government, you call it whatever you want, right? It's got a bad name in my world, because of what it's been used for. But there has always been a need for the good to unite, because there always seems to be the wicked and the bad uniting. And if they unite more powerful than the good, then they overtake the good. Right. They get above you, right? That's a fact. I don't know why this world is that way. I don't know, what the natural laws that allow that to happen, but it is a fact. right? So there is a need for the good to get together and stand and prepare and defend and use violence if necessary to defend their rights, and to defend against the wicked that would try to, again, put you in slavery, take the fruits of your labor for their own benefit, basically, and that's what crime is. So, and that to me is government, if you want to use that word. That's the only, I think that's the origination of what we call government, is that the good uniting. But do we have to do it, in the way it's being done? Absolutely not. Do we have to extract, everybody's wealth to do it? Do we have to force people to be part of a club? Do we have to force them to obey to the other people's group? No, then you become the very taker that you're trying to defend against. Right. We should be free, but we also should willingly defend each other's liberty. And I think that that's the way a free people on that basis would look like.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a private contract, not some kind of social contract that no one signs the moment they're born, and suddenly, apparently, people are born, by the way. This is this idea that they're born and they get some glasses on, write the social contract. Yes, I agree. And then they're extorted for the rest of their life. So I 100% agree. I have to finish this off by saying it's been heroic watching what your family has done over the years. And I think that the reason that people in many cases have come out against you and attacked you just shows that you're doing the right thing. And it's consistency and taking the moral high ground. And I think that's really important. So God bless your family, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Like what you see here at Wham! Don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We cannot do it without you guys. Every donation is extremely, extremely appreciated, as we're getting incredibly shadow banned. We've lost 80% of our audience since January of 2019 and counting. They are ripping us apart here on YouTube, and the only thing we could do in the meantime as we prepare for the next big step is to ask for help from the viewers that support our free information that we try to post on a daily basis. You can also find us on Subscribestar, where just $1 a month, that's all it takes, $1 a month is all it takes to truly make a huge difference. If everyone gave $1 a month, it would change everything for independent media, and we could win this information war, and we can defeat the mainstream medias eventually. And of course, on Subscribestar, we post subscriber-only content that you'll only see on Subscribestar. So make sure to pledge there, become a patron. That makes a huge difference, guys. And also, don't forget to check out our Bitcoin address below in the comments and description, as well as on the screen for you to scan, if you please. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on the alternatives. We will likely be deleted by YouTube in the next 2 years. It's already happening on a vast scale, so make sure to find us on flote.app. That's flote.app. at Josh Sigurdson, as well as at Wham, W-A-M. Flote.app is replacing every social media, and I mean, it's just incredible the opportunities it provides for not just creators, but for the average person who wants to get away from these nannies telling them what they can or cannot see. They plan to replace Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, Tumblr, Reddit, and Patreon. You could subscribe to us on Flote and pledge with cryptocurrency. It's really innovative. We are also on BitChute at World Alternative Media, as well as so many others, Minds, PocketNet. You can find us at World Alternative Media on Instagram. There's many options. And finally, don't forget to join us at Anarchapulco 2020, the famous event, the best liberty event known to mankind, other than perhaps Anarcho Vegas 2020. There are 2 major events coming up that we are extremely excited about, and you can use promo code WHAM, that's W-A-M, and save 10% on your tickets to these legendary conferences. There's so many amazing people speaking there. You won't want to miss it. So make sure to support in any way you can, even if it's just sharing our videos, pressing like, pressing to be notified. Anything helps, folks. You are the change you wish to see. Thanks for watching, everyone. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth. Be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.